Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I am doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week. I have a pretty normal-sized haul for the week, 12 books, and before I get into this, I do have a Kickstarter coming up this March. After we fulfill Like Father Like Daughter issue 7, we will be launching They Call Her the Dancer issue 1's about a dancer/assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. So if you want to follow the project to get those early bird specials and specials for the discounts for the book, definitely go check out that page. Now, also, of course, we have the viewer's pick of the week at the end of the episode. I'll be announcing last week's pick, but also let me know your pick of the week in the comments below. Now, getting into the episode, number 12 for me was Future State House of L issue 1. This is a book I got because I wanted to get all the Future State issue 1s, as you know, and this one, for some reason, came out in February, so all the rest of the issue 1s came out in January. I picked and choose from those January books to see which issue 2s I was getting, and House of L, yeah, just kind of a random one. It was just a one-shot. Maybe that's why they put it in February. And it had the same issues I've had with a lot of the Future State titles, where we get to see, we're thrown right into the story. There's 10,000 characters. You're like, what is going on? And that was definitely a big detriment for me. The artwork was actually pretty solid for this book, which is why I went to the 2-star rating, but it was very confusing. And there's just, like I said, a lot going on. It was really hard to attach to any of the characters. So I'm giving that one 2 stars. Now moving on to number 11, which I'm sad to see this so low. It's Return of the Valkyries issue 3. And, you know, I love Valkyrie, I love Jane Foster, but this, I feel like it's a bit crowded. We have a lot of characters here as we're dealing with other Valkyries and, of course, Jane and King in Black all at once. The new Valkyrie that they're trying to introduce, it just too many characters sharing panel time. Now, I enjoy the scenes we get, but I kind of wish this wasn't a King in Black tie-in. I feel like they could do so much more, and obviously the next volume won't be a King in Black tie-in, and I'm hoping we get a little bit more character-driven story because of it. But obviously this has to be very plot-driven and very null-driven. And I like King in Black, but I don't necessarily think this needed to be a 4-issue miniseries. And also the artwork is not as strong as some of the other artists that have been on this book, and even the artists that were Mattia, who's going to be taking over Valkyrie as well. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, a book I kind of got on whim, and this is from Aftershock. This is Nuclear Family, issue 1. The same writer who's taking over Harley Quinn wrote this one, and I'm a sucker for a good family book, so, and especially dealing with themes of suburban life and putting that on its head. So we do get to see that here. It's a slow burn where we get to introduce to like this 1950s type of world, and then we get to see who the family members all are. I think they could have done better at describing the family and giving a bit more personality to everybody. There's all very quick glances and they all feel pretty stereotypical, the characters. But it seems like, well, first of all, there's a missile that's hit their house and their town, and they survive. And there's men with guns, and they come out, and that's the end of the issue. So I don't remember from the solicit, but I believe they go to our time, if I remember correctly, but that's not told in this issue. It's just told in the solicit, so we'll see what happens in issue 2. I'm curious to see what the exciting incident will do to our characters. I kind of wish the exciting incident happened in the beginning of this book to really make this a hook of a first issue, but like I said, very slow burn first issue. I'll give the second issue a shot. The artwork was really good for this book, really solid, but it didn't give me that much. So issue 2 is going to really make it or break it for me. So I'm giving that 2 stars, and that is number 10. All right, moving on to number 9, X-Men issue 18. And this one, finally, we get to see the characters from the vault. This has been like a year since we've seen these characters. I'm a huge Laura fan, so I've missed her, and I'm glad we get to see her back. This is exactly what happened on that first day, them going up against the Vault's people there, and how they're working as a team, and things do not go well for them in the end. Things explode. It looks like a lot's going to change for them, especially by the next issue when they get out of the Vault and so much time has passed. I'm more interested in the next issue than I was here. It's very set-up-y. story, but I enjoyed seeing the characters interact with each other and what that teamwork was like. I didn't really care much about the Vault or the villains of the Vault, but I'm interested in the idea of losing time, and I hope they really drive that home with the next issue. Artwork also has been always very solid for this book, even though there's a rotation of artists here. It all has kind of a similar vibe, especially with the coloring. I don't know if it's the same colorist, but it has the same vibe for all the coloring of all these issues. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 9. All right, moving on to number 8, which is the Magnificent Miss Marvel issue 18. And this is the last issue of Magnificent Miss Marvel, volume that I've been very torn on. I love Kamala. She's one of my favorite characters, and I enjoy her adventures, but I just feel like this volume has been on a simmer for me. I haven't liked many of the plot lines, especially what they did with Zoe's character, which they fix in this issue. It all felt very quick, where Zoe's like, yeah, I'm sorry, like, I ratted on you, and Kamala's like, yeah, it's okay. It just felt like there was more story to tell, and maybe they just found out they had to end their series. It all felt a bit rushed. And then Outlaw, that event's still going on, and you kind of tell they're trying to sweep it under the rug as well with Kamala Law. They're like, well, let's just not talk about that right now. So I don't know what direction Outlaw is taking, or if it really mattered as an event, and if it was a successful event. I feel like because of COVID, it kind of came out, it didn't come out, and then it's still out now, and it's affecting some series, especially Champions, but it didn't really do well here for me. But the reason this is higher is that I enjoyed the friends, even though maybe to get to that point wasn't as smooth, but it's cool just to have them fight alongside each other. I feel like that's always been the heart of Miss Marvel, is her supporting characters. So to have a whole issue about them as well, and Homecoming and bringing things back to normal was fun, and probably one of the better issues of a kind of mediocre run for me. And artwork is always solid for this book. Just wasn't a huge fan of some of the arcs that they have explored here. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Crossover issue 4. So this issue had some interesting developments. So if you're a Donny Cates fan, there's actually a reference to God Country, which I read the first issue of. I have the trade. We're actually going to be reviewing that trade / graphic novel for our podcast, Comic Book Weekly. So I've been saving it to kind of binge read it all. But I noticed a sword, and there's a big transition moment to get there. There's one of the characters from God Country, and that was an interesting twist. And obviously we still get to see Madman and all these other Image characters, so that was really cool. I do think some of the plot, though, was a bit of a slow burn, which is why it's a little lower for me, but the Easter eggs were a lot of fun, and just getting a little inches closer of what the story is all about. Artwork is also so good in the transitions from just that reference of God Country to the rest of the story and some of the narration. It's a really well crafted book. So giving this 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. All right, moving on to number 6, which is Captain Marvel issue 26. And this is the end of the Future arc, which hasn't been my favorite arc, but I liked it as an action issue. It's a very heavy action issue, but really it was the end that made this closer to my top 5. We get to see Jessica Drew has sacrificed herself to bring Captain Marvel back to her time, and Captain Marvel obviously missing her friends, loving her friends, and understanding not things, things don't last forever. And I really like the ending of this issue, where we get to see Captain Marvel talk to her boyfriend, which is War Machine, and say, hey, you have a daughter in the future. She's not mine. I don't think we should be together. So it's really interesting to see a future story kind of dictate the present, and this kind of whole butterfly effect that plays a part in that. So that was a really interesting way to tell a future story. So I enjoyed that. Artwork is really solid. I like the whole entire cosmic magic thing that's going on with Carol. So I like that. So overall, it was a pretty good issue for an arc that I haven't loved, but I'm really excited for the next arc, to see what the consequences of this future arc is, and then also her, getting this magic Doctor Strange thing going on. So that's kind of interesting. And artwork was a lot of fun here too. Just again, the more magic-based powers for Captain Marvel was really interesting to see for this one. So again, a more action-driven issue. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Harley Quinn, Black Label. Is this a Black Label? Yes, it is. But Batman White Knight Harley Quinn Presents. It's such a long title. And with this one, I enjoy Harley's story. I don't really quite care about the villain. That's when it slows down the story. But when we get into the more nitty-gritty of Harley's relationship with the Joker, and we get to see some flashbacks with that, Harley's relationship with Bruce, Harley's relationship with Ivy in this issue. I love that stuff. And we also have a killer cliffhanger, which is very Batman White Knight, and where we get to see one of Harley's hyenas die because it saved Harley's daughter. So I thought that was really gut-wrenching, and just seeing that whole scene of Harley trying to save her daughters or her kids from burning fire was very interesting. I also see, okay, well, who lit this? Who's going up against Harley? And maybe making the villain a little bit more interesting. But this has been a pretty good series. I do like the White Knight main series a bit more, but I like learning more about Harley, and I think she's such a fascinating character no matter what universe you put her in. The artwork is really, really nice, a little softer than the Batman White Knight stuff, and it really works for this series. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Alright, moving on to number 4. You're going to be surprised because it hasn't been in my top 5 in a while. And that's The Amazing Spider-Man issue 60. And what really pushed this one was the cliffhanger. We got to see Mephisto from One More Day show up, and Doctor Strange say, hey, what did you do to Peter Parker's soul? So we're digging a little deeper into the many clues that Nick Spencer has been dropping about One More Day. Is he actually going to retcon One More Day? What is he doing with this? Especially in a Mary Jane and Peter Parker driven issue. And Mary Jane's staying. I actually really enjoy the whole Mysterio stuff where, Mary Jane's now the one keeping secrets, and she's between a rock and a hard place where Peter's going through all this shit with Harry, and she's like, well, I need to tell him that I'm working with one of his villains, and it all makes sense, don't worry. So yeah, I think that's definitely some interesting, finally, plot progression and character development here. The stuff with Peter doing that monologue on stage, I didn't love. I get it. I get it was him, connecting to Mary Jane. And for Mary Jane in issue 25, that made a lot of sense. She was literally in the middle of a play. So her monologue was really strong. But to repeat that here, it was weird to see for so many pages in a comic. I feel like there was a better way to use the comic book medium to tell that story. And all just felt very expositionary. And I didn't like that. Even though I liked the idea behind it, I didn't think it was executed as strongly as it could have been. And then Mark Bagley, I love his artwork, but I don't know if this is the strongest I've seen of his Spider-Man work. There's some details that could have been stronger in this issue, but overall, it was a better issue than what we've been getting. There's some progression and character development, and hopefully we get more of that. And more Mary Jane, she's staying, which is pretty good too. I like that she's finally back in the story, because I think that's some of Nick Spencer's strongest parts of his run has been Mary Jane and Peter Parker. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Alright, moving on to number 3, which is Dark Detective issue 4, Future State. Definitely one of my more favorite Future State books, and the Jason Todd story was okay. I'm still debating if I'm going to get that mini-series about Jason Todd and Future State Batman in general. The artwork is so simple, so it's kind of harder to get into that, but I think it's one of the stronger backup stories, if that counts for anything. But Dark Detective, man, I really like the main story, which is why it's so high. Mariko Tamaki and Dan Mora, I am so excited for them to take over Detective Comics, because if anything is a telltale from this, Detective Comics is going to be great. I really liked the daughter here, so we get to see the daughter of the crazy man who believes in aliens and all these conspiracies, and she's actually working for the magistrate, but the twist is that she's a mole. She's trying to depower them, and it's this really fun action adventure. There's even a ticking time bomb where we get to see Bruce Wayne and the daughter team up. to try to bring justice back to Gotham. And it was a really great team up. I loved how action heavy it was. And like I said, this creative team just does such a good job. And I like this was character driven, because of Future State there's been so little character driven stories, and that this has a future. This has a way to tie in, because Mariko and Dan Mora are taking over Detective Comics, and I'm sure it will somehow tie into that as we get more into, I guess, seeing if Future State is affecting some of these titles. So giving that 4 stars, I enjoyed the main story a lot for that. So that is number 3. All right, moving on to number 2, which is Future State Aquaman issue 2. And this is a little bit lower than issue 1, but still one of my favorite Future State titles by far. This one is in Andy's point of view, so Aquaman's daughter and Mara's daughter, and she loses her leg, and man, we knew that from the last issue, but her trying to recover, and really it's the connection between her and her brother, which is Aqualad. And Jackson, and we get to see her just fight and try to become stronger to save him, and that's what it is. It's a rescue mission, and I really enjoyed it. I love how emotional this is, and again, the Future State titles that have been able to be character driven have been the ones that really make sense. It's only been a 2-issue story, and you don't feel lost, because there also are characters that we've seen before, even if they're older or a little different. And I love their connections so much, and even the moments where Andy kind of wants to turn to the dark side. That's kind of a big part of her arc in these last 2 issues, that she has the power to be darker and kill people and control people, but she has Jackson to hold her back. So I love their relationship a lot. The artwork is drop dead gorgeous. Probably my favorite art for all the Future State titles, and just such a pleasant surprise, because I'm usually not a huge Aquaman fan, and I really hope we get to see more of these 2 characters, even though I think it had a really good solid ending, and we don't need more if we never do get more. I think they deserve more, and I think there's so much more story to tell with these 2 characters and their brother-sister relationship. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is Scumbag, issue 5. I love this book. I think it's great. There's so much great humor in this one, but also we dig a little deeper into Ernie, our main character, our scumbag, and we see how he ticks. He always wants to be a partier. He just wants to escape life, and there's this moment where he talks to this horrible AI program, and we get to see that they say that, hey, the reason you do all this is that you just want to be loved. You just want people to care about you. And Ernie, that hits home for him. And then there's this whole adventure where we get to see the villain's grand plan, and Ernie has the opportunity to run and get his gold and leave and not care about the world, even though millions of people are going to die. And we actually get the connection of the agent's father into all this, so we get a lot of personal stake here, and he decides to be the hero, and the secret agent that doesn't like Ernie even gives a little nudge and says, hey, you're a good person, and I'm sorry I called you a scumbag, even though he is, because he actually is part of the whole betrayal aspect. I'm curious to see when the agent learns that, how she'll feel, but this was a really good character-driven story. I really like how we dig deeper into this character and this facade that he's playing, but also the main story as well, and pulling the curtain of what's actually been going on and how the world's going to be affected by it. So really solid issue. I've been loving Scumbag, and it's just so good and even fun. Even though this is a deeper issue, there's some really, really great jokes in here as well, and the artwork is so good. I just love the contrast between this super spy character and our Scumbag. It just works so well, and the action was really well done here, and again, the emotion was really done well here as well. So giving that 4 stars, that is my number 1 pick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and definitely let me know in the comments what was your pick of the week this week. Now, going into the viewer's pick of the week from last week, it was King in Black issue 4. That was the penultimate issue of Marvel's big event, and here are some comments about that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Definitely go follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics like Father Like Daughter and They Call Her Dancer, and the reminder to go follow that Kickstarter. And every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news. Thanks, guys. Bye.